You know, sometimes you go to work or you go through the day and you just tell a really fascinating yarn because you heard something. This is one of those times. A Russian spacecraft carrying food and supplies for the International Space Station is out of control and hurtling towards you right now. It's due to enter our atmosphere this week sometime. It comes after the space probe Messenger, you'll remember this on Friday, ran out of fuel and did a death dive into Mercury. That was, Friday. In fact, during the program on Friday, we chronicled it. Space commentator Matthew Pavletich is here now. Matthew, morning to you.
Good morning, Paul.
Let's talk Messenger first of all.
Yeah.
So we know over 4 years it was conducting its mission around Mercury,
yes,
sniffing, touching, photographing.
Yes.
But in its death dive, so the last few moments of its life, did we learn anything that we didn't know?
Well, they wanted to get as much science as they possibly could out of this poor probe, which had been baked by the sun for 4 years and was running out of fuel. So as it was doing its death dive, they were also measuring the magnetic field of Mercury again to see what effect that would have on its radio signal. Mm-hmm. And they found that Mercury's magnetic field is quite lumpy, but it's also quite substantial, surprising for such a small world, less than half the size of the Earth.
So we didn't know that before?
Not as much, no. And it looks kind of like the moon on steroids, but it's very different. It really is a planet rather than a body that orbits another world.
So as a result of Messenger hovering around there for 4 years, in what temperatures of about 400 degrees?
400 plus, which is like a setting on your stove. It's really hot.
Yeah. So that's what it's like.
Yep.
Stick your head in your stove if you want to know what Messenger.
Well, they found that Mercury's got surprising amounts of water at its polar regions and deep craters that the sun never sees into, and that its soil and rocks are absolutely, for want of a better term, lousy with precious metals and minerals. But no humans are probably going to go there in our lifetime, if ever, because it is such a hostile environment, so close to the sun, radiation and so forth.
And a spectacular gravitational pull too.
A little more than a third of Earth, but the sun's gravity is the factor. Getting to Mercury is actually one of the most challenging bodies to reach in the whole solar system. Messenger had to do a bunch of slingshots around Venus and Earth and its own rocket motors as well to slow down into orbit.
So did we learn anything that's useful? I mean, we learned a lot of interesting things, but did we learn anything useful from it?
Well, that remark I made about the magnetic field of Mercury, how it interacts with the sun's solar wind, it's an interesting comparison with our magnetic field, which is really the only thing that protects us from the sun's radiation. Ask a scientist. For the cost of a couple of superhero movies, they did this probe. So there you go.
Yeah, which is amazing when you think about it, eh?
Yeah.
It is just amazing. What a nuggety little thing. Yeah. All right, let's talk. Now, this is not so successful. This Russian spacecraft, which was sending items of interest up to the International Space Station, it is completely out of control. It's not a light little beast either.
No.
And it's coming back to Earth. What is the chance that any of it will survive re-entry?
It is designed to not really survive re-entry because it has no heat shield, unlike its manned cousin, which is the Soyuz spacecraft. And they'll be worrying about that because they're such close cousins to the manned Soyuz ship. If the same problem happened with the Soyuz ship, the crew would have been in jeopardy. But the docking mechanism of the Progress, which weighs several hundred kilos, is probably the only part that would survive re-entry. So if you didn't want a piece of stainless steel and ceramic weighing several hundred kilos to hit you on the skull, you probably wouldn't want to be around it. But the chances are very good that it will land in the southern Pacific Ocean sometime during this week, as a lot of the cargo craft do. They fill them with rubbish at the end of their lives and send them into the southern Pacific to burn up.
Do we know what went wrong here?
They're zeroing in on the cause. They think that when it's separated from its third and final stage, the rocket third stage, that it might have collided with that third stage because up to 44 pieces of debris are surrounding the spacecraft as it tumbles violently. The crew of the International Space Station with binoculars and big camera lenses photographed it, and they could see it tumbling wildly over 100 k's below them.
Binoculars.
Big stereo binoculars,
Right. So how much trouble are they in? Obviously, they've got supplies there to last them for a while, and there are other ships that could go up. But is this the beginning of what could be quite a considerable concern?
Well, fortunately, there are two other cargo craft going to the space station this year, an American and a Japanese one. And they've got enough supplies to last them till about the end of August. Now, opera singer Sarah Brightman is going to the space station in September, I think it is. So they're going to want to have it pretty stocked for their paying customer to come stay with them. But she's going to be doing a science and educational program as well. But if they don't get further supplies there by August, and they probably will, because as I say, the American one's going first, they'll start to run low, and they might have to bring the crew of 6 down to only a crew of 3 and do with that for a while.
Sarah Brightman, how much is she paid, do we know?
Oh my God, something like 50 million American dollars, I believe,
Shoot.
which is only a fraction of her personal fortune, but she raises hundreds of millions for charity over her long career. So
Yeah, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah, she's done
You'll
well.
see old Mayweather will be up in the space station next. He's got to find some way of spending that money. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Space commentator Matthew Pavletich.